Imagine waking up to news that American forces just hammered dozens of ISIS targets in Syria after those cowards killed our troops. That's the kind of decisive action we're seeing from the Trump administration right now. And while oil prices are dipping below $60 a barrel, Russia's slashing discounts to keep their crude flowing. These shifts aren't just headlines. They hit your gas pump, your grocery bill, and America's standing in the world. Let's break it down. Good evening, everyone. It's December 19th, 2025, and the world didn't slow down just because we're heading into the holidays. A lot moved in the last 24 hours, and as always, I'm going to lay it out straight why it matters, especially for us here in America. Starting with the big news from the Middle East, U.S. forces carried out large air and ground attacks on ISIS locations in Syria. This action was taken after last week's ISIS attack, where 2 American soldiers and 1 civilian interpreter were killed. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said these attacks were strong and serious. U.S. fighter planes, helicopters, and rockets were used to hit many ISIS bases. Loud explosions were reported in several areas, including homes in Deir ez-Zor. Look, ISIS isn't defeated, and attacks like this remind us why we can't just pull back entirely. For Americans, this means our troops are still in harm's way, but it also shows resolve, sending a message that if you hit us, we hit back harder. It stabilizes energy routes too. Instability there spikes oil prices, and we've seen enough of that, hurting our wallets. Over in the global economy, oil markets are feeling the pressure. Brent crude's hovering low, partly because Russia's desperately cutting export prices with steep discounts to move their barrels despite sanctions. At the same time, reports out today show India flipping to paying for some Russian oil in Chinese yuan, just another way to dodge Western restrictions. That's BRICS flexing, folks. China dumping billions in U.S. treasuries while hoarding gold, pushing for alternatives to the dollar in trade. Why care? Because if the dollar loses ground as the world's reserve currency, it means higher inflation here at home, weaker purchasing power for your savings, and more leverage for adversaries like China and Russia. But on the flip side, cheaper oil right now is easing pump prices. Good news as we hit the road for Christmas. Turning to Europe, EU leaders just wrapped a summit where they scraped together a messy compromise. 90 billion euros in loans for Ukraine over the next 2 years. They backed off using frozen Russian assets directly after pushback, including from Belgium's prime minister. It's a lifeline for Kyiv, no doubt, but it highlights cracks in the alliance. Europe's stepping up because they know a Russian win threatens the whole continent, and that instability would flood markets with refugees and disrupt trade we rely on. Meanwhile, in the Indo-Pacific, China's quietly expanding influence, refurbishing old airstrips in the Pacific, like in Micronesia, right in our allies' backyard. And tensions simmer in the South China Sea, with ongoing harassment of Philippine fishermen. This isn't abstract. It's about securing sea lanes that carry trillions in trade, including goods that end up on American shelves. A stronger China there means higher costs for everything from electronics to clothing, and more risk to our Navy's freedom of navigation. On U.S. foreign policy front, the administration's keeping pressure on sanctioned players, blockading Venezuelan oil tankers, tightening on Russia. It's America first in action, protecting our energy dominance, countering threats without endless wars. And with Trump signaling possible deals down the line, like loosening some chip restrictions to China, it's pragmatic, balancing strength with smart economics. BRICS chatter continues, with their unit currency idea gaining traction. Part gold-backed, part basket of their monies. It's not dethroning the dollar overnight, but it's a slow grind toward multipolarity. For us, it underscores why we need to keep innovating, drilling, and leading. No complacency. Wrapping this up, these developments, from strikes in Syria to yuan oil deals, remind us the world's interconnected. America's power isn't fading, it's adapting. Cheaper energy gives us breathing room, decisive military moves deter enemies, and economic pressure on rivals protects our prosperity. But it takes vigilance. Stay informed, stay strong. We'll get through this holiday season and whatever 2026 throws at us, stronger than ever. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.